This weekend I'm also testing out some knives, some Bushcraft knives. I'm going to be testing them for seeing how good they do at chopping, how well they do at carving and shaving, you know, like feather shavings and stuff for fire starting. See how I can make a bow drill set with them, see how good they are at chopping. So I've got a Mora heavy duty knife. It's a great little, so far, it's great for like whittling and shaving and things like that. It's got a good edge, it's got good steel, it's got a fantastic handle, great handling qualities, but it simply doesn't do any kind of chopping very well. Like I was trying to, just making this baton stick and getting some thick branches and stuff off of it, and I just couldn't chop it with this. The next up is the Cold Steel Master Hunter. This is a great little bushcraft knife. I like the blade shape. It's got good steel. It's got just enough weight to it to be able to chop through some of these twigs like that and branches. I like the long taper on the blade. It's very strong. It gives me a nice long. It's a full flat grind, so the edge geometry is pretty good on it, and the handle is really, really excellent. So this is a great little bushcraft knife, and it's pretty lightweight. Next up is my modified bushcraft knife, Black Cloud knives. Made this a while back. I put some file work on it, jimping for the thumb, good thumb ramp. Made real deep finger grooves that are a little bit curved. The handling qualities on this are really nice. It's a full flat grind also, so the edge geometry is really good. It's lightweight, but it's got just enough weight to do chopping and stuff. It's extremely sharp. It's got the best steel of the bunch. ATS 34 with my special heat treatment. Bloodwood handles. The handles, I think, they're extremely comfortable, but I did a lot of work in contouring these. I think the wood on these is just not going to be as durable, ultimately, as any of the synthetic handles. But it's a great knife. I've had it for quite a while. I've used it a lot, and it's working extremely well. The handle is held up. Now the biggest one I've got is the Cold Steel Scout. This is much bigger and heavier than the rest of them, so this just cruises through twigs and branches and stuff, like on this. It's another full flat grind. It's got pretty good edge geometry. I'm going to try to take some close-ups of this when I get back, because I was making some stakes. I was chopping up some 1x3s and some alder wood. I placed a 2x4 on the bottom so I wasn't smacking into the dirt or anything. And when I finished chopping stakes out of those, I looked at the edge, and the edge is like all chipped. It's heavily chipped on here. And all it was doing was hitting perpendicular into the 2x4, pine 2x4. So it's pretty disappointing. And I don't have a steep edge on this. I don't have a really fine edge. This is a chopping and carving and bushcraft knife. So I put a fairly steep edge on it. So it shouldn't have chipped like that. So that's definitely something wrong with the steel or the heat treatment. I'll take some close-ups when I get home. I'm also going to evaluate that a little bit more this weekend as I do some bushcraft chores with it and see if that edge holds up. But so far the edge is really pretty disappointing on this Cold Steel Scout. And it's a pretty thick knife. It's got some good weight. Not too heavy, but it's got some good weight to it. So out of all of these knives, the Black Cloud knife and the Master Hunter so far I like a lot. And if you want a super lightweight bushcraft knife, and you're going to carry something like the Laplander to do cutting up chores, like bigger cutting up chores, the Mora knife might be a pretty good choice too. So I'm going to go ahead and do some batoning next with these. I'll film some batoning so that we can see how these handle with some splitting up. I'm going to make split up some wood here. I got some fairly hard pine here, or spruce or fir. Can't tell, it's all dead. I'm going to get some really hard fir tree. And I've got some balsam fir here that I'm going to split up to make a fireboard and a drill out of and see if I can make a bow drill set out of it. I've got some softer wood here. I got this new Laplander saw, and I know there's some saws that are supposed to be a little bit faster than this one, but I don't think they're that much faster. And those are cut on the pull stroke. I kind of like cutting on both strokes like the Laplander does. This might not be as fast, but I think in the long run I'll like it better. I found this piece of dead balsam fir up there, so this is going to be a lot softer than the other one. I'm going to saw a piece off of this, a couple pieces off of this, because I'm going to want to split this for fireboard and a drill so I can make a bow drill set out of this. I'm hoping that the heartwood will be soft enough to, it's got some nice splits here, down here. So I'm hoping the heartwood on this will be soft enough to make a good fireboard and drill and get me some good hot coals. So I think I'll make a fireboard down here. I want to cut about, maybe more, yeah. About this much. This really cruises through this softer wood. It actually did a pretty good job on this harder wood. I made both cuts on this with the harder wood, and it cruised through this pretty good too. So I'm really happy. For the weight, about 6 ounces, 6.5 ounces I think. It sure pays for itself to not have to carry a big heavy knife to do chopping. And it's much, much faster than chopping. So that's pretty efficient. You're just not going to chop through this with anything but maybe a hatchet faster than this Laplander gets through these things. So I'm going to try to cut off a couple of these. See, again, the Mora knife is sharp, but it just doesn't have the weight to cut through these very fast at all. Although in a pinch it works. I'm gonna see how the edge holding is on this after this trip, and make an evaluation of that. But the Mora's looks pretty good so far. Now, the Black Cloud knife, right? See, it's got enough weight behind it and a good edge geometry. The Mora knife has that special Scandi grind on it. I tend to like flat grinds better, but the Scandi grind really does allow you to get some good sharpness on it. And again, the Master Hunter is a little bit lighter than the Black Cloud knife, with a full flat grind again, but it's got a really nice handle on it. And you can get back from the blade a little bit and get a little bit better leverage with it. It's actually chewing through this pretty good. This is it's a much, much larger one than the other ones, but it's chopping through this really, really quickly. So, nice job. Very nice job. Very nice job chopping through there. Now, it makes a difference, batoning. One of the problems was I was batoning on that log with a lot of shock absorbing bark on it. So when I brought it over to the rock and batoned on the rock, the Cold Steel Scout went through this pretty quickly. So I'm going to try batoning this one with a couple of the other knives on the rock and see what that looks like. So let's try the Mora knife on this. I want to cut out a square out of here. You got to be careful not to hit your knife on the rock at the end. It's going off at a little bit different angle than I want, so I have to reset it. But it makes a really big difference what you baton on. So be careful when you're batoning stuff for firewood or for a bow drill set. Try to get on something solid. See if I can, so now I'm going to try the Cold Steel Master Hunter. See if I can square this up here. So that went through that pretty nicely. So I sawed up a piece here. I'm going to try to take the first chunk off with the, see how the Mora knife does on this. I'm going to try to cut out the heartwood for the drill. There's one big check here. I'm going to see if I can get a good square out of this. Such a big difference it makes. To be on a hard surface for batoning. Now this is working a lot better. That's the way it should be working. So next up is the Black Cloud knife. We'll see what that looks like. Again, this does a pretty darn good job. Got a big, huge knot there, so we'll see how it cuts through that. Having a tougher time cutting through the knot, but there it goes. So very, very nice so far. Try the Master Hunter on this. Cleaned off a little bit. Make the cut from the other side also. All of these guys seem to have pretty tough handles. I'm hammering on them and I'm not really doing any damage or anything to them. So far so good. And I'll try the Mora knife again on this side. Mora knife seems to be doing a little bit better. But out of all of the knives, the Mora knife still transmits way more shock to my hand than any of the others. So that alone is a consideration for batoning like this. Yeah, I'm going to try a different knife. The shock is really beating on my hand. Let's try the Black Cloud on this side here. See if I can do a little bit better. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of shock through here too. I'm going right through a huge knot. So maybe the Master Hunter might transmit a little bit less shock to my hand. I can get through this. Yeah, that was tough. That was pretty tough. I think the Mora is just a little out of its league in some of this. It's got a huge split in it, so I don't know if it's going to make a good drill. I'm trying to make a drill out of this. I may have to go back to this one. I wanted to make it out of heartwood. Make a few more splits on here. See if I can round it a little bit. When you get down to this, the Mora handle is pretty controllable. I like it. I like it. It's a lot of work to make a bow drill drill, but this guy on YouTube talked about taking balsam heartwood, so I'm gonna try it. See how it works for me. See if I can get some good calls. So I got a pretty good one started here. I'm gonna whittle it down some more. So far, you know, getting on a decent rock. The Mora knife is pretty good. I think sometimes the handle transmits a lot of shock. Sometimes it's a little bit less shock. The Cold Steel Master Hunter is really good, and the Black Cloud knife is also better than I thought it would be. I thought the handle would be too hard because these other guys have some kind of rubberized handles or craton or something. This is just wood and steel, but the handle is done a lot better than I expected. Just, you know, don't expect too much weather resistance and ultimate resistance from wood handles compared to these synthetic handles. The synthetic handles is just going to outlast the wood handles and be tougher. I'm not going to want to beat on this wood handle with a chunk of wood like I'm doing with these. I've already got some dents in it, but I'll beat on these with a chunk of wood till the cows come home, and you just won't do anything to them. So in that respect, some of these other knives with synthetic handles maybe make a little bit better bush knife than something with wood handles. You know, there's something to be said for wood if that's your preference. Maybe micarta or something like that would be really good. Now we're going to test some whittling capabilities of these knives. I got the Mora knife. I've got my heartwood balsam fir piece for my drill, for my bow drill set. I don't know if I'll be able to make this work. There's some big checks and stuff in here, but it might work. It might work. So the Mora knife, I got to do some big hacking and stuff. So the Mora knife really starts to come into its own a little bit better with this. We've got a great handle. The blade is fairly small, so I got a lot of leverage. It's almost like having a super tough folder. It's so lightweight. It seems to do a nice job here. Later on I'm going to be making shavings for the fire. Kind of glides nicely through the wood. So try the Cold Steel Master Hunter now. Again, a really good handle. Was able to do some good shaping. And kind of power through this branch knot better than the Mora knife could, I think. I'm going to make this thing round enough. I'm already off center a little bit. May need a little surgery. Right, this is where the bigger knife just about always is better. Trying to go through these knots. Just want to chip away at it. Try the Black Cloud knife a little bit now. Any knife you're trying out, try it out. There's a lot of difference in how the knife handles, different knives, different knife designs, different angles, different grinds. The handle is really important. It depends on what kind of handle you prefer, what kind of handle feels better to you. Different handles will feel different, will feel better for different purposed knives. here's a superior steel, an edge on this, where I can just carve right through these knots on this instead of having to chop away at it. I'm able to go right through these with the Black Cloud knife. So steel also makes a difference for the type of work that you're doing. Let's try the Cold Steel Master Hunter. The Master Hunter does a real nice job of just slicing through these super hard knots. Let's see how the Mora does. The Mora should do a pretty good job. It's got a good sharp blade. And it does. Mora also just slices right through it, just like slicing a potato chip off of there. Really nice. For this kind of work, the Mora really handles pretty well. These more bushcraft-oriented knives really handle pretty well. Now the Cold Steel Scout. This is where this one handles itself pretty well too, but you know, you're talking about some finer control. It's a lot more weight to it, so it's kind of heavier holding it up and keeping it like this. It's not as good a whittling knife. It's a little bit more of a survival knife, kind of a small to medium sized survival knife. So it does extremely well. Like I said, except for that edge chipping on here. All of these knives are sets of compromises. Depends on your personal preferences and what you're using it for. If you need a pretty much indestructible knife for a survival situation, this Cold Steel Scout is pretty good. There's a bunch of other good knives that play very well in the survival category. But it's pretty good. I think all of these knives are a pleasure to use. Cold Steel Scout is a little bit too big for this kind of stuff. Just doesn't handle as well. But the Mora Heavy Duty, the Cold Steel Master Hunter, Black Cloud Knives, Bushcraft knife, these guys all do a pretty nice job. They handle really nicely. And they're a real pleasure to use for whittling and bushcraft activities like this. And the last thing I'm going to be testing these for is making some of the final parts in the fireboard. This has got a really sharp point on it, but it's really reinforced. So I'm wondering how well it's going to do digging out it doesn't have too much belly. So I'm wondering how well it's going to do getting that first depression started. The Master Hunter's got a nice belly. I like that a lot. The Black Cloud knife kind of sits in between. It's a little bit less belly than this, a little bit more than this. So we'll see how they work when I'm carving out the first depression in the fireboard.